Let me just start off by saying that it's not unmanly to use lotion, okay? Nobody needs to see your ugly, ashy elbows or your ashy knuckles. Your ashy skin is just like floating into the atmosphere. Please just, use lotion, okay? On a side note, you'll actually smell like flowers or I don't know, whatever fragrance your lotion smells like. It's a win-win. Your skin looks hydrated and you smell fresh for the entirety of the day. But all jokes aside, I wanted to clarify a couple of things before we get into today's video. First of all, I'm not an insider, okay? I know there are a lot of big content creators within the platform that have their connects overseas, or they possibly know somebody at like a distribution center, or they just have some sort of insider information or insider knowledge pretty consistently. I'm not that guy, okay? Most of this is based off of like hardcore rumors or rumblings within the community, or in some cases, it just is kind of like a logical assumption. Like some of these figures we've been building up to for years now. It's common sense that we're gonna get there eventually. And so, as I said, this is what makes sense to me, and I've kind of compiled this all into one video. Mostly rumor, mostly logical sense, and then just I'll throw in a couple of wish list items that I personally feel like we definitely deserve as a community, as a fan base, because we've been, pretty big supporters of McFarlane now for quite some time. I should also clarify, I know I put DC Multiverse in the title or in the thumbnail, or at least I plan to. I'm not sure if I change it, but at the moment of this recording, that's the title. But I will include the collector's edition line as well, just because it's a part. I know it's technically not a part of the DC Multiverse. Same thing with the Page Punchers line, even some of the DC Direct action figures, which are all within that 7-inch scale line. They're all going to fall under the same umbrella. I think McFarlane, like I said, just decided to make all these little sublines back in the day to maybe keep some of them. If for any reason the contract goes or expires, maybe he'll say, I'll keep this or that. But it's all one and the same. So let's get straight into it. The first figure that we're talking about here has to be the Darkseid figure. Now, this is something that we've already seen in a couple of different iterations within the last year or so. We did get the original one, which had like the Powers color scheme, the white and blue, and some people liked it. I mean, I think it appealed to a much smaller fan base, but because there was no other alternative at the time, most people just picked him up because he's Darkseid. It sold out. It was going for like ridiculously high prices on eBay and Amazon. So it was somewhat popular because it was the first Darkseid figure that we've received in like the longest time. And then eventually we got the Justice League Task Force version, which is reusing the exact same body mold, just giving you a completely different palette. Now, personally, I thought it was a pretty good idea. Not to say that it's a perfect representation of Darkseid, but we were getting something unique. We were getting something creative, something that's kind of out of left field. And that's really what we've been wanting from the DC Multiverse in quite some time. It was something that would add a little bit of flair and a little bit of flavor to your display. And for the most part, it's essentially encapsulated. Like if McFarlane never decides to retouch that little video game franchise for the longest time, that's okay. You got the 4 essential core characters along with the Darkseid for that particular video game. So I think it was a really cool addition from McFarlane. However, for the longest time, we've been speculating that we are supposed to be getting a classic color scheme or a classic color palette for Darkseid. Now, what that means to everybody, I think, is a little bit different, but essentially it's like the lighter blue with a darker blue color scheme. And source material is obviously very key and important here because there are different panels, there are different comic book story arcs, and so some people might like the classic version. Some people might prefer the New 52/Rebirth era, which I'm going to say quite often because even though those aren't like my favorite story arcs per se or my favorite storylines, I still like the art much better, or I like the comic book stylings. I definitely love the designs of the characters way more than like their classic counterparts from like the golden or silver age, where they aged really poorly. Let's be brutally honest. I don't know if I want everything to be like first appearance, and this is a perfect example of that. So hopefully we're able to get him. I do feel like we're probably potentially going to get at least 2 more Darkseid figures out of this body mold. They may tweak things here and there. I would love to see like a glued on chest piece, because if I'm not mistaken, like the Rebirth era had some extra little stuff added to his chest, which was something that I don't think the current body mold has. So maybe they just glue something, or they have like a plastic overlay piece. Regardless, we are supposed to be getting at least a couple of more Darkseid renditions, or a couple of different looks for Darkseid using that exact same body mold. Hopefully they at least tweak the head sculpt enough to make it look different, because I don't want it to just be like, here's Darkseid with just a different color palette. Like, hopefully they change it enough throughout the time to really force people to purchase a new Darkseid. I will say, for those hardcore collectors, they probably already customized these. Let's be brutally honest. Most of them either picked up the Task Force version or the deluxe first appearance, or the first version that we got, and they probably already did their custom work. So just keep that in mind for those of you guys that are still wanting a classic or a more classic version. Just be patient, it's right around the corner. Now, within that same topic of conversation, because we've already been receiving the 1989, how many different versions have we already gotten for Michael Keaton, right? Like maybe 2 to 3, including the Flash version. But it's only a matter of time before they start building up to the other big villain in that film franchise. And yes, we're talking about Jack Nicholson as the Joker. Now, this really is kind of convoluted, because I hear different things from different people. There are people that feel like, or that say that the licensing for the likeness of a particular character is dependent on the actor. Even though, let's say, Warner Bros. Does own the rights for that particular version of Joker as Jack Nicholson, if you want to make a product, like if you're retroactively trying to make a product, that's supposedly you have to pay the actor as well as Warner Bros. I don't know how factual that is. Maybe that's something that's holding this up. But I think it's only a matter of time. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the answer is. Maybe you only have to pay Warner Bros. Other people say you have to pay the actor and Warner Bros. Regardless, it's only a matter of time. We've already gotten quite a few different characters. There's been some rumblings about, receiving more figures within that universe. And I will say, McFarlane is pretty good at this. I know I kind of criticize him sometimes because he'll give us like one character from one film series or from one comic book line, and then we never see that particular group kind of fleshed out a little bit more. But he has done at least a decent job of giving us like 4 to 5 different figures from a particular storyline. The DC Metals was a perfect example. Like, we've already received quite a few different figures from that particular universe. We also got the Dark Knight Returns, a self-encapsulated little wave. We did get the original wave with Joker, Robin, Batman, and Superman with the horse, and then he kind of established a few others. Like, I think he had the armored Batman that was released on its own, but that was like if you wanted to continue fleshing it out. But McFarlane does a pretty good job of that, so I doubt that he's only going to give us the Michael Keaton Batman and then not continue to expand on that universe. It's only a matter of time. I think Jack Nicholson is right up there with somebody that we need an action figure for and for that display. Not to mention, McFarlane loves his Jokers. I mean, we've gotten so many different. We got the 3 from the 3 Jokers comic book storyline. We've received, I believe, a Golden Age, a Silver Age Joker. We've gotten so many different versions, and it would be just an absolute shame that we didn't get at least one more Joker. And I think this would be the proper one, definitely, considering how deep we already are into that particular film franchise. Now, the next 2 figures obviously had to tie into this particular film franchise. In 1992, we all know we got the sequel, Batman Returns, still featuring Michael Keaton, but we had some new characters, and that included Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, as well as Danny DeVito's Penguin. This was, Tim Burton's beautiful Gothic universe, and this was, one of the more successful live-action comic book adaptations at the time. And I know I already touched on this, but I'll go back to it. The fact we've already gotten Michael Keaton with his iconic Batmobile, and we've gotten, like I said, maybe like 2 to 3 different versions of him with his costume or his outfit. It's only a matter of time before they continue to expand on that universe. I have to believe that McFarlane is about that. He loves completing little displays. He might not be able to give us, 10, 20 different figures from that particular storyline or that film franchise, but he at least gives us a wave. The Dark Knight trilogy, Christopher Nolan wave, for example, was a perfect example of that. Like, you would think we just get the Christian Bale one and then maybe a Heath Ledger, and that's it. We never get anything revisited. But he's continued to give us. He gave us a Tumbler. He gave us Lucius Fox. Yes, Lucius Fox in action figure form. Who would have thought? So he continues to kind of expand on certain little displays, and that's why I feel like some of these rumors have real validity. These are, I think, more real than anything that we've heard from before, just because we've seen the track record from McFarlane, and I strongly believe that at least we're going to get some promotional images for these figures within the next year, even if they release maybe in 2026 if he still has a license. But I do feel like these figures will be hitting store shelves within the next year or two. And if you're not jizzing your pants just yet, if your nips aren't hard enough from the figures that I've mentioned this far, I have heard some rumors that potentially we do get some action figures from the 2011 Green Lantern film. Yes, that one that people love to bash on. Even the actor or the star actor for that particular film loves to retroactively go back and say that, oh, it was one of the worst choices or one of the worst decisions that he's ever made. What's interesting is that I think James Gunn did an interview not too long ago where he joked about offering a Green Lantern role to Ryan Reynolds, and I think he like gave him a middle finger, told him to F off or something like that, which crazy because I feel like the first time he regretted being Green Lantern, whereas and I think this time he might actually regret not being in this particular franchise. Could you imagine how iconic it would be for him to be Deadpool and Green Lantern, like in two separate universes? That would be huge. And especially with James Gunn as, you know, kind of directing traffic, I think it's going to be just an absolutely splendid universe, and Ryan Reynolds might honestly miss out. But yeah, this is one of the most hated DC films of all time. Personally, I can watch it. It's an okay film. It's not like the worst thing. I'm not clawing my eyes out after watching it. I'm not burning my DVD copy, but it's not a great movie. It's just one of those movies that exist. It's based in a comic book universe, and because I love comic books, I'll watch it. And I think this would honestly be great in action figure form. It's not like we're only getting great films from McFarlane. I mean, he did do the Batman and Robin film, which was critically panned, didn't make any money, and overall people just absolutely hate that film and that entire little era of DC comic book live action adaptations. And so I don't necessarily feel like just because the source material is not great that people are not going to buy the product. I think this is a perfect representation of that. People would love to see Ryan Reynolds in that Green Lantern outfit. Even if they hated the movie, I think there are some characters here and there that they could potentially see in action figure form. And you could also get Blake Lively in action figure form. I'm not sure if that's doing it for you, but at least you can have, you know, Ryan Reynolds next to Blake Lively in 7-inch scale if that's what you're into. Now, the next two figures, I actually speculated that were going to be released in 2024. We didn't get them, and so we're back at it again. I definitely feel like we're due a Harley Quinn and a Poison Ivy action figure in the 7-inch scale, in that 1/10 scale. I think we did get one when McFarlane first acquired the license, but that's an ancient figure and nobody really cares about it. I would love to see both of them in either that Rebirth / New 52 era, and I continue to go back to that era because I don't know if I want a first appearance Harley Quinn. Have you ever seen her? She looks really weird. If you're a classics kind of guy, I guess, but I just don't know how I would display her in my tiny little glass display case. Like, I just don't think that there is that kind of demand for, a first appearance of either one of these characters. Although I will say Harley Quinn hasn't really changed too much. She did appear, or her first appearance was in the animated series, and then eventually she would be in like a graphic novel or something along those lines. But she's actually kind of a semi-modern character. She made her first appearance, I believe, in like the early 90s, which is crazy to think that Harley Quinn is that young of a character, considering she has like a cult following behind her. And I know I made this joke in my previous video, but it's crazy to think that we have like a Punchline action figure, even though she made her debut, I think, during like COVID, so like in 2020, 2021. And, Harley Quinn is now like 30 something years old in terms of, like comic book character age. And we still only have like I think maybe like 2 or 3 different figures of her. And then 2 of them were based on the Birds of Prey film. And then we might have had a couple of more from the Suicide Squad James Gunn project, but we need more, I think, comic book representations of her, and I don't feel like we necessarily have that in our display just yet. Same thing with Poison Ivy. I think maybe a few years ago I could understand why people would be, or why an OM would be reluctant to actually give us a female representation of either one of these characters because maybe they didn't sell or whatever the case may be. But both of these characters have actually gotten a much bigger following over the past few years. We also just got the animated series on HBO or on the Max website, and the writing is pretty solid. The film has, or I should say the series has, some really good comedic elements, and so the popularity for both of these characters has really just risen over the past few years, and I think it's a perfect perfect opportunity for McFarlane to be able to give us both of these characters. If he wants to base them in the comic books, great. Or if he wants to do something from the animated series, I would still take it. I think we desperately need updated versions of both of these characters in our display. And then I'll group up my last two because I think they're both relevant to the Batman universe, and that is a new Scarecrow, which I think we got a Scarecrow that was based on like a newer comic book series a few years ago, but we don't have like that, not necessarily classic version, because I mean, who wants that, but at least like something from the most iconic era of the DC universe, when he had that like axe that he carried around and had the iconic mask draped over his face. And then it's crazy that we also don't have a Two-Face or a classic representation of Two-Face in our display. This is one of the most iconic DC villains of all time. Both of these guys, I believe, are from like the 40s or 50s, around there. Like, they're both classic representations of who a Batman was fighting at the time. So it's crazy to think that we still haven't received either one of these. As I said, Scarecrow, we've received a few different versions. We had that newer comic book run Scarecrow, and then we did have the Christopher Nolan live action figure, as well as the Harvey Dent Two-Face, which was also featured in the Christopher Nolan trilogy. But again, we need something that's based in the comic book universe, and we still have yet to receive those. Now, I didn't make this type of list for 2024, but I would have had both of those figures on that list because I had some, I had a pretty good feeling that we were going to get them, and there was already quite a bit of speculation and a lot of rumors floating around that we would get them. But 2025, I think, is definitely the year for these particular figures. And then to round out today's video, to bring it all full circle, there is a rumor that we will be getting a re-release of that collector's edition line Wonder Woman. We constantly see this figure floating around eBay or Amazon, going from anywhere from like, I don't know, $70 to $100. I think at its height it was like at $120. There's a figure that originally retailed for $29.99. I actually do remember seeing her at like a comic book store or somewhere along those lines for like $50. I decided I'm just going to wait it out. I'll wait until I'm able to find it in person for the retail price, which was $30. I was never able to find her. And so for the longest period of time, I think we've been speculating that we're going to get a Wonder Woman collector's edition line. My theory on that particular figure is that McFarlane thought that he wasn't going to sell a lot of these because he hates female characters, or he doesn't hate them. He just doesn't like the fact that they're not extremely profitable. And so I think he just released very few quantities, and that kind of came back to bite them, because now we see this being one of the hottest commodities from the DC multiverse, or at least from McFarlane's DC multiverse. So there's a really strong speculation that we'll get a re-release of this figure. If we're not getting like an exact re-release, we'll get a DC multiverse version with, less accessories, but we're getting that exact same figure, maybe with, a little bit of touch-ups here and there. But the rumor is that it's basically the exact same rendition that we got with the collector's edition line. But there you guys have it. This is pure speculation. This is just what I personally feel like logically makes sense in my tiny little reptilian brain. All of this could be right, or all of this could be wrong. Don't hold it against me. Okay, this is the rumblings of the community, of social media, and just kind of stuff that I've had written down on my notes for the longest time. If you guys enjoy this type of rambling content, make sure to stay tuned. We do this pretty consistently. I think we're up to like 4 to 5 times on a weekly basis. I genuinely enjoy bringing together content for you guys. This is what I love. I love action figures, and I love ranting on. So hopefully you guys enjoy it as much as I do. If you guys do, stick around, and as always, stay safe. Enjoy the hobby. That's the most important part of all this. Forget about anything. Forget about the drama. Forget about the ranting. Just enjoy them. Pose them. Have fun with them. Play them. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.